Alright, now let's talk about a quintessential item that most KLR owners have sort of figured out, and that's the tool tube. The tool tube you're looking at right there is a 4-inch black ABS. It's not PVC. I decided to go with ABS because you can actually get a 4-inch in there. Some people have been concerned about whether or not 4 inches is enough clearance, and you've seen how much I've been bouncing around and compressing the shock all the way, and I've had zero issues with it. I'll put in a quick picture. The only time I've ever damaged one of these is I had a kind of a jinky setup with a jack stand when I was working on the bike in the garage. The bike fell off the jack stand pierced the actual tube here itself, and that was the only time I've suffered any damage. Now, on my ride down in Arizona, I had a big pancake rock. Basically, as the front tire went up, it flipped the rock up, jammed somewhere up between the tool tube and the skid plate back here, and sent me bucking up like a bucking bronco and pole vaulted me straight up. The bike landed, bounced, I fell off, and I noticed that I thought my tool tube had broken. I thought that rock had literally just taken that out. What had only happened was it had somehow nicked the side here, which I'll zoom in. So the rock sort of took a chunk out of the actual plastic piece here, and it did actually break the wing nut. I've replaced this wing nut with the backup one that I've had on here. And that was it. That's the only damage I've suffered with all the off-roading that I've been doing, and have had zero issues with contacting the tire. So other than being covered by mud, I've had zero issues with it contacting from the tire, zero issues with it just getting in the way. I do have some high quality stainless bands on here that attach from the skid plate. They're not necessarily on the highway peg part here. They go from the skid plate up. So I have had some of those break before, and so I've decided to double up so that I've got redundancies. And then also what you see on there is, one, it was kind of an easy way for me to carry spare. These are Go lights from Giant Loop. We'll do a review on those. They're like the Fandango, super great straps. But one, it was an easy way for me to carry spares of those in case I needed to actually strap anything else down. And two, I wanted to see the longevity of these being exposed to the rain and elements and things like that. It was a great way for me to test these bands and use them maybe possibly in this application instead of the stainless bands. But ever since I went double bands, I haven't lost a single band, and it probably depends on the actual quality of them themselves. But they are kind of pinched pretty tightly back there on the skid plate, and we'll take a look at that when we rip this off. Now, on the other end, I chose not to use an inspection cover like you saw on the other side, the red cap. Decided to go with an actual full rubber cap, so I'm only accessing this from one side. Now, on the bikes on the kickstand, this is generally down facing anyway, so it's easier to access from the right side of the bike. It also gives me a little bit more room because those inspection caps actually take up quite a bit of real estate inside of the PVC tube. You can also see I've got the length here of the tube just basically right where the highway peg would stop on this bar. So it doesn't stick out any further. So it's not taking any brunt of side impact. It's basically getting protected by my highway pegs from Happy Tree. Then it's just as easy as unscrewing the inspection cover. You can see this is just a nut that compresses with this big rubber band. I did have one of these crack. Never had an issue with water getting in there, but I did notice as I tied it down, this actually became cracked. So this is actually the second one that I've owned over the years. But, you know, it's a couple bucks at Home Depot. Again, this is a 4-inch inspection cover. And then kind of the first thing I used to have in here is I used to carry a different sprocket. A lot of my trips I'd run 14 tooth, and then I keep a 16 in here. With the Gen 1, I was able to change that out on the fly, which is that little retainer plate. It was quite easy. But first thing I've got on here is it's duct taped because the plastic container is kind of getting a little brittle. But it's just a bunch of nuts and bolts, and it's come in handy more times than I've needed. You know, it's KLR, it bounces around. I did have a rear brake pop off on one of my big trips down in Reno. And all the fluid is, I think, drained from the banjo. There's a little score mark on here. I don't think it's leaking from there. And so, digging in the little pile of bolts that I always carry with me. And Lord knows why, but I carried the exact bolts so I'm pretty sure they're both the same. So we're going to get this thread locked back in there, and then I'll go find an auto parts store and get some brake cleaner to get rid of all the gunk, and then we'll re-bleed the brakes. And sure enough, I had the bolts that worked at least to get me back on the road till I found a hardware store. And then what I've done is the tools that I keep in here are actually in a bag themselves. And one that helps keep me kind of organized, I can take the whole thing out as one. Two, if there's any damage in there, I'm only losing maybe, like if I get a huge hole in the bottom here, this whole bag isn't going to fall through that hole. It may get wet if it's raining out or something, but I'm not going to lose all my individual little loose tools. And we'll go over that at a later date. All right, so there's 4 inches. Here is a 3-inch. As you can see, I could probably even stack this one up here. Who knows, if I decide to do like a round the world trip on this bad boy, we may add a 3-inch somewhere else on the bike. You know, this is pretty much out of the way, and I could just add this on top. But we'll see. I know there are a few folks out there that don't like actually keeping tools in their tool tubes. They'll keep things like oil filters for long trips around the world, stuff like that, because they're too worried about the ease of access, people getting in and stealing your tools. And if you don't have your tools, you're kind of up a creek, you know, out in the middle of nowhere. So it's a possibility, but I run soft bags anyway, so security is always in the back of my mind. It's just an issue that I'll have to come up with a slightly different solution maybe down the road. Thanks for watching, guys.